Holding on Daf Chav Dalet, page 24a, and the Gemara that we learned yesterday was all about the question of how much do we have to be concerned of things going wrong, and do we have to always take that into consideration? In the case that we spoke about yesterday was where a kohen is married to an Israelite wife, and he goes on a trip and Dinas Hayam, some other country, and the question is she allowed to eat truma while he's away? He might never come back. He might have died, and because she doesn't know if he died, so the question is, if she eats truma, she'll be doing a terrible sin of an Israelite, a czar, eating truma, eating holy foods. However, when she's married to him, it's no problem. The problem is, do we have to be concerned? How much do we have to take into consideration such a scenario, such a statistics? Do we take that into consideration that he might die? Because especially traveling is not safe, and we don't know. We can't be sure that he's alive. And so the Gemara brought a Mishnah. The Mishnah said that that she is allowed to eat truma, and she assumes that he's alive. She's allowed to. That the halacha is that she's allowed to. That's a Mishnah. Then the Gemara said, but there's a contradiction, because there's a brisa that talks about a person who gives his wife a divorce, and he says, this is your divorce, sha'a achas, one moment or before I pass away, this will be your divorce. And so because he gives her a divorce, and he says it should be, this will take effect. Will take effect the moment before I pass away. What he's really doing is he's doing her a big favor. The favor is he has a brother. They don't have any kid. He doesn't have any kids with his wife, and he has a brother. And if he passes away, the wife is going to have to marry the brother. And could be numerous problems with that. One of them could be that we don't know where the brother is, which would mean that she will never be able to get remarried because she's obligated in either marrying his brother or doing something called chalitza, where she removes the obligation, or he removes the obligation that they have to be married. And then she would be allowed to marry someone else. The problem is, especially in the olden days, imagine if someone is in Australia and they don't have a way of, they didn't have phones, they didn't have, they didn't have a way of messaging people. And the person, her husband dies, she's basically going to be an aguna. She's going to be locked up for the rest of her life, so to speak. Why is she locked up for the rest of her life? She can't get remarried. She's stuck. Her hands are tied. Why are they tied? Because she has to first find his brother, and he has to either give her a chalitza type of divorce, or he gives her, or he marries her, but she might not want to marry him. So that's another issue. It might be that could take time. So what does the husband do to do a favor for his wife? He divorces her, but he doesn't want to divorce her. He wants to stay married. But he divorces her with a condition that the divorce will take effect a moment before he dies. So she will never be called a widow. She will be called a divorcee. In case he dies, she won't be called a widow. She'll be called a divorcee. And if she's a divorcee, she's not going to be obligated to find his brother and do yibum or chalitza, marry the brother, or get a divorce from the brother, type of divorce for this type of scenario called chalitza. And so that's the case. That's the case of the brisa. Now, so when a person does such a thing, he says, this is I'm giving you this divorce. This is your get, your divorce document. One moment before I die, it'll take effect.
Bye-bye.
Yes. You're still muted. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you want to ask something?
I didn't find that I could come to the class yesterday, so I didn't know how this all arose. But I'm a Kohen, so I've been hearing about this thing for years and years. Uh,
Oh,
but are we allowed to give a divorce on a condition?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Rabbi,
is he allowed to come back and remarry her?
no.
He
Why
does.
not?
If he,
Well, well, the thing
as
is,
long
he's
as
a
he,
kohen. He's a
if he
kohen.
comes, if he comes back, if he comes back, then this condition has not been fulfilled, so therefore he's still married to her.
Well, there's two separate stories. One is where there's no divorce. One is a story where he travels out of the country. That's halach b'alam din hasayam. There's no divorce there. The other story is where there's a divorce, and not necessarily did he travel. I mean, he gives her a divorce, and he says, "This is your divorce. A moment before I die."
Yeah.
Now, the problem is that he could die at any moment. And so, should we be concerned that he might die in the next moment and she should never be allowed to eat truma again? So it says, Aser lechel truma miyad. She's prohibited to have truma immediately. And so that is the second case. So this case is, where the divorce, I mean, on the one hand, it's not a real divorce yet but we're concerned that it might be, and therefore she would not be allowed to eat truma immediately. That's the rule.
Rabbi,
Yes.
is this condition used for also other halachot like Yerusha? I know that there were some cases where you have children, you want to be able to split the money evenly, and then if you have a bechor, you have to give him more. So I've heard that people they use this as a not this, not necessarily this, but that the money is given and like a moment before whoever passes away, and that way
Right.
it's a gift, not a
It's a gift.
Yerusha.
There
So
are
I'm
numerous,
wondering,
yeah.
is this Gemara, is this used to back that?
That they use a different method, if I'm not mistaken, when it comes to distributing one's wealth, different than the way the Torah distributes it. I think there's a method of how it's done it's done with using some type of um, uh, a deal where if that the child will be obligated to give away a certain amount in order for him to get some of it or something like that. And there's a method, and I remember looking into it a while back because someone it was the question was, are you allowed to it came up because I run an organization and someone wanted to leave something in their will, and they were wondering is that a contradiction to the fact that the Torah says the money is supposed to go to the child, and so how does that work? So there is a method of how it's supposed to be done. I don't think people really do it so much properly. I think it just ends up that, well, they gave it to you they weren't supposed to, but they did, because that's it's a gift. It's considered a monetary gift, but but there is a method that was used, and I did look into it a while ago, and there was some type of a deal that it's sort of like uh, I'll have to look it up again exactly what the wording was, but it had something to do with the fact that the child will agrees to give this to that charity, in order for him to get something else that he'll benefit from it, and he's only going to get something if he gives a certain amount to charity. So it sort of like forces the child to give it, because if the parent gives it, then it's not like he followed the Torah laws of giving the children the inheritance the way it's supposed to be according to Torah. But this way, it sort of like forces the child to give it without going against the Torah law. So anyway, I have to look at the wording again. But
because I've also heard that this, like 1 hour before the person dies, the money is already.
Well, you
given.
definitely could do that. I mean, that definitely is an option. I just don't know if that's the common way it's done. And I don't know in American law if that how that works, but I guess it should work, right? But yeah, I guess well, the other thing is you also don't want to give away. You do want the Torah law to take effect on some money, so you have to leave a little around. But the Torah law does take effect, and you're fulfilling the mitzvah of the Torah of inheritance. And at the same time, most of the money was given before, and it was distributed before. Yeah, so it's not something that should be an option. To do something, to do it in that way, make some type of condition like that. I'm not sure why that. I'd have to look into it. Why there's a different method that was used instead of doing it that way. Like maybe they could do that as well for like organizations and things. A moment before the passing, they're giving it to a certain charity. In any event, the case here is that the person is making this condition on the divorce, and it works.
It sounds like you're trying to learn halacha in order to outsmart Hashem.
So this is the thing. The loopholes in tax laws are because they were not smart enough to cover themselves. The loopholes in the Torah are because Hashem allows it if you do things in a certain way. Hashem knows all the loopholes, and he makes them because this is a method that it's permissible, and that's a method that it's prohibited. So it's not because there's any you're not outsmarting Hashem. It's that if it's done in a certain way, it's allowed.
So if
everything comes
sounds
with,
it sounds like Hashem is rewarding Torah scholars to beat the system by learning halacha.
Well, okay, you could look at it that way. I mean, there is such a concept that Hashem does reward the tzaddikim, or that tzaddik goyzer, Kodesh Baruch Hu Mekayim. He sort of, he does, it does seem to have some people who have connections. They do get special treatment. So I guess you could say that it's like a reward for the Torah scholars.
Professional courtesy.
Right.
It's like the shliach's discount.
Right. So the Gemara was dealing with the question of using a animal as a wall for your sukkah, and that got us into this problem of what happens if the animal dies. Do we have to be concerned? And Reb Meir held that you have to be concerned. At least one explanation of Reb Meir was we're concerned that the animal might die. That got us into this discussion. Reb Meir was of the opinion that we're concerned that the animal might die, and Reb Yehuda said that it's kosher to use an animal for a wall of a sukkah. He was not afraid that the animal might die. The Gemara now asks, is that true that Reb Meir is the one who is concerned, and Reb Yehuda is the one that's not? Here we're going to find that it's the opposite. Why? Because here we have two contradictory brises. We have a brisa which says that we don't have one Mishnah says, two contradictory sources. One is a Mishnah. The Mishnah says you don't have to worry that the husband is going to passes away. And the other one says that you do have to worry that he might die in a minute. Therefore, you can't eat truma right away. So one place we're concerned someone's going to die. The other place we see that you don't have to be concerned someone's going to die. So what's the answer to that? Abaye said the answer was, you know what? The difference is Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda, two different rabbis. One rabbi is more concerned. The other rabbi is not. Who's the one who's concerned? It's Reb Yehuda's concerned. Reb Meir is the one who's not concerned. This is the answer that Abaye gives. And he brings in it he brings a proof that this is that this is a difference between Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda. Where is this proof from? So it brings a case where a person buys wine from the kutim. And so yesterday we mentioned about who the kutim are, and they didn't. At this point, at least, it was not established that the kutim are not considered Jewish, and instead there was a debate among the rabbis. Some rabbis felt that they are considered Jewish, and we're following that view. And the Brisa follows that view and says that they're Jewish, but at the same time, we do know that they do not separate the tithings, the truma, the meiser, and give it to the proper recipients. And therefore, a person who buys from the kutim, the wine is kosher. They don't worship idols, at least at this moment. According to the Brisa, they understood that the kutim were kosher. They were Jewish, but at the same time, they did not separate the tithing. So what you would need to do is separate the tithings. And I mentioned yesterday, there's a debate. Did they never separate tithings, or was it only on produce that they sold that they didn't separate tithings? But let's just assume they don't separate tithings. That's their story. They were religious in some ways, and not they didn't accept everything when it came to money, maybe. But the bottom line is that when you buy from them, you do need to separate tithings. The problem is, what happens if it's just about Shabbos? You just got your wine. It's almost Shabbos, so you've needed wine for Kiddush. Now you got to separate the tithings. But the problem is you just got home and your wife lit candles and it's already the sun just set. And now it's too late to separate the tithings. And now it's called tevel. The wine that you bought is considered tevel. In fact, it's not even called demai. There is a concept of demai where we buy produce from people who are ignorant, or people who weren't so careful about everything. So then those type of scenarios are called a suffix. It's a question. They might have taken meiser, they might not have. They might have done the tithings, they might not have. That's a case of demai. But here we're talking about the kutim. The kutim, we are sure that they didn't take the tithings. And so in this case, the Brisa says that you have a way to do it. Again, the example that I'm giving is that it's Shabbos, but there could be another example that Rashi mentions is, let's say you're not it's not Erev Shabbos, but it's a different problem. You don't have a pure vessel to put the truma in, and you need to have the truma. You can't make it tummy. You have to have it pure. Therefore, because you can't separate, you're stuck. You can't separate things now. But on the other hand, you want to have wine right now. You have your business meeting is happening right now, and part of the business meeting is you drink a little wine and you make the deal. So the problem is that you didn't separate. It's tevel. This is considered untithed produce, the wine. And so what do you do? So either in the case of Shabbos or in the case of the emergency, and then you don't have any vessels that are pure. So what do you do? So what you do is you could say a whole formula that the two lugin that I'm going to separate after Shabbos or after this meeting, when I get a pure vessel, they are going to be truma. And then the 10 lugim that I'm going to separate afterwards are going to be meiser risha in the first tithing. And then the 9 that I'm going to separate afterwards, because there's going to be only 90 left approximately. So the 9 that I'll separate afterwards are going to be meiser sheni. And then in that meiser sheni, I am redeeming on top of money that's set aside for meiser sheni to bring to Jerusalem. And then you could drink the wine right away. Shoisa miyad. Now, this is the opinion of Reb Meir. And Reb Yehuda argued and said, together with Reb Yossi and Reb Shimon, and they said, no, you can't. The understanding that the Gemara has initially is that the problem is that we're afraid that the barrel is going to crack. What's going to happen? You're going to end up not separating later. So the whole leniency here that we're talking about, that we're dealing with, is that you want to separate the tithings later from this wine. We're talking about separating tithings from wine later after Shabbos, let's say, or after your business meeting when you go to the store and you buy a vessel to container to hold pure container. But so you're going to be separating it later. And the thing is, but you're saying a formula now, and you'll separate it later. And whatever happens later, you want it to take effect retroactively. And it'll be like you drank wine that was 100% kosher and tithed. It was wine that had already been tithed. What do you mean? You didn't really tithe it yet, but because you're going to tithe it later, and you said this formula, it's going to go back retroactively that it was tithed. It was revealed later that your portion that you ate was not the portion that was part of the tithing. It was a separate portion. The portion that was tithed was revealed later that it was some other part of the barrel, and therefore what you drank was already considered tithe. Retroactively, we consider it as if your portion was considered kosher and had nothing that was supposed to be tithe. Part of the tithe was in it, and so the term that the Gemara uses for such a thing is called brera. Brera means that it's chosen, it's picked. Yes, Victor.
Rabbi, I'm just curious why the translation here, they're using the word wineskin versus barrel. And I'm not sure the difference between the two. Is there something?
Yeah, Rashi uses the word noid, which they probably does mean more like a wineskin, and I guess maybe that's the term. I just use the word barrel because it's just a common word that I would use when I talk about wine. But let me just see. In the actual brisa, it says you bought wine, and it doesn't say anything. But later, one second. But later on, it says bekias hanoid. It uses the word noid. So I guess that would be more exact to say maybe the wineskin. I think a noid is probably more translated as
a picture, Rabbi.
The wineskin as a wineskin. Yeah, what does your picture show? Does it show the barrel or like a bag?
It shows the wineskin.
Wineskin, but what does the picture show? Also a wineskin?
Yeah. Yes.
Right. Okay. All right. So
1 second.
I believe you. It's fine. You don't have to show it. We don't need a picture of a wine.
Is that skin or skein? SKEIN.
No. It's skin. It's an
Okay.
animal.
that.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
Because they
It's
used to make pouches like to carry on the
Right.
horses
Wow.
that were like saddlebags. Oh, there you got a picture.
Skin is only with wool.
It was a whole
Looks
hide.
like it's from a hide. This thing.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's part of an animal cleaned out.
It's an intact hide.
They didn't have
Right.
bottles. They didn't have plastic. They didn't have glass.
Try doing that at your Shabbos table. Bring that and start pouring people wine from that, huh? See what they
That says that
see who drinks it.
I
This
wonder
is
if
a thing
it changes the flavor at all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It says that they would take
Thick
a hollow
These
reed
thick
into one of
reeds
the
in-
legs and serve as a spout.
Try doing that exactly at your Shabbos table. Huh? But
Well,
anyway,
That's
Yeah.
why
If
we
you
have
were-
decanters.
right,
If you wore that outfit, maybe you get away with it.
right, exactly. And the person who came to you, the guest, wore that outfit. Maybe.
So it looks like maybe this is more something that if one little pierce and then the wine will be all over the place. Whereas the
Right.
barrel,
They say he
barrel
says
is
that
more
they
sturdy.
stuck straws.
Maybe that's why this is
Well,
what they're using.
I guess what you're saying is correct, but I would also say it maybe has to do more with what was commonly used for wine in those days was this. It was easier to get this than to get a barrel, maybe.
No, barrels
also
is
Barrels are
much
very
bigger.
expensive. They didn't
A
have the kind
barrel
of
was a
barrels we
lot
have now.
more.
it would be heavier.
Plus,
But you
it's
can make a
easier
small
to
barrel.
easier to move this thing around than out there.
Right.
Right.
All the ancient stories are referring to this. You know,
All the what?
all the legends and ancient stories are referring
Uh-huh.
to this.
Right.
They did not have barrels like we know, and that became a
Right.
craft much later on when you could bend wood. It's a very big process.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But they when they transported on ships or boats in order to sell it abroad, they used pottery.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay, thank you. Okay. So anyway, yeah, so this is the story, the wineskin.
See, that's why you
Um,
don't see too many Jews called Cooper.
I saw Jews called Cooper.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay. So so thank you for Victor for that. So we should really translate it more correctly. The wineskin, not a barrel. So the issue here is the wineskin gonna crack? And do we be concerned that it'll get pierced, it'll crack? And in that case, you're gonna end up having drank untithed wine called tevel. And or are we not concerned that it's going to crack and that you will end up having retroactively drank from a wine that was untithed? Are we concerned or not concerned? So here we have a brisa where Rabbi Yehuda says it's prohibited and Rabbi Meir says it's permissible. What does it come out? That Rabbi Yehuda says you're not allowed to do this trick, this option of making this formula, reciting this formula, because Rabbi Yehuda is concerned that it might crack. He's very nervous about something going wrong. And Rabbi Meir is not concerned. He says you're allowed to use this formula and drink it, and later on you'll take the trick. Oh, it might crack? I'm not worried about it crack. He's not afraid. So we see that Rabbi Meir, it doesn't take that extra step of being concerned. Rabbi Yehuda does. And this is the opposite of Abaye's conclusion from the previous brisa and from the contradiction between the Mishnah and the brisa. So we've got a contradiction of Mishnah and brisa. Abaye wanted to say one is Abaye, one is Rabbi Yehuda, one is Rabbi Meir. And he brought a proof from another brisa, and the proof that he brings is from this brisa of buying wine and using this formula, buying wine from the kutim. And so
about my powder or later. Okay.
So he says we see here that Rabbi Yehuda is worried about
Fine.
mute everyone.
South Florida is bringing food.
Okay. Should be quiet now. So let me just redo that, the flow of the Gemara. The Gemara is saying that Abaye had answered the Mishnah in the Brisa by saying Reb Meir is the opinion that Reb Meir is not worried about someone dying, and Reb Yehuda is worried about someone dying. And Abaye says, I have a source for this from a brisa. What is the brisa? You bought wine from the kutim, and what ended up happening? Well, you need to use this formula to separate the wine. And the issue is, are we concerned that the wineskin will crack or not? And the conclusion of the Gemara is it depends. Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda, and Reb Meir says he's not concerned. So the same Reb Meir who says he's not worried about someone dying is the Reb Meir that says he's not concerned that the wineskin will crack. Reb Yehuda, who is concerned about someone dying, is also going to be concerned that the wineskin will crack. Now, ultimately, all of this seems to flow beautifully, except for the fact that the original reason we brought this whole discussion was because we were talking about the case of a sukkah that has an animal and they're used as a wall. And in that case, it seems like Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda hold the exact opposite. So that's where we are stuck. So we've got the Brisa that started us off with this whole discussion on 23a doesn't flow with all the cases on 23b and the way Abaye is explaining all the cases and he has a proof to them. And so everything doesn't seem to work because we've got Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda's view very problematic. One place it seems like this one is worried and that one is not worried. The other case we seem the other one is worried, this one's not worried. So how do we reconcile this? So the Gemara answers Epoch. Epoch means that Abaye really learned it the opposite than the way it was said. In other words, we thought Abaye, we had a tradition. Abaye said it this way. At least we thought that his the tradition, the Messiah, that the way it was passed down was that Abaye said that Reb Meir holds one way and Reb Yehuda holds the other way. Really, it was the opposite, and that was we got confused. But really, Abaye was saying the opposite, and if you learn it that way, then it flows with our Brisa about Sukkah, and it fits with the Mishnah that deals with a kohen, the wife eating truma, and it fits with the Brisa that talks about someone giving a divorce, a kohen giving a divorce to his wife, where they're also that'll fit with these two opinions. The only thing that's going to be a problem is going to be the Brisa that spells out Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda. That we're going to have to deal with because that is not going to flow well. Because there we see clearly that Reb Meir is not concerned about the wineskin cracking, and Reb Yehuda is concerned about the wineskin cracking. So that seems to prove the opposite than what we are concluding now. Epoch means we're concluding now that Reb Yehuda is the one who's never concerned, and Reb Meir is the one who's always concerned. And that's why Reb Meir doesn't allow the sukkah with a animal, because he's concerned. And that's why Reb Meir is the one who says that she's not allowed to eat truma miyad, because we're concerned. Reb Meir is always concerned about someone dying, and he's concerned about the animal dying, the kohen dying. And the only issue that we're going to have is, well, why isn't Reb Meir concerned about the flask, about the wineskin breaking? Why isn't he concerned there? So we're going to have to deal with that in a moment. But in the meantime, what the Gemara is saying is Epoch. We have to switch it. We initially were saying that Reb Meir is never concerned. And the conclusion is Epoch, switch it around. Reb Meir is the one who's concerned always. And now we're on page 24a. And then we said that Reb Meir was the one Reb Meir is chayish lemisa, Reb Yehuda does not. And we even have a brisa that will fit with this way of understanding. What's the brisa? It's our own brisa, the brisa that we started with. And this is the source to say that must be that Abaye had originally said it this way, not the other way. And so the source to learning it this way is the brisa that we started with, that a person made an animal that's a wall for a sukkah. Reb Meir is the one who's concerned that the animal will die, and he says poisel. Reb Yehuda is the one who's not concerned, and it's kosher. So now the Gemara deals with the kasha, the Reb Meir ad the Reb Meir, and then the Gemara is going to say it's a kasha, Reb Yehuda ad Reb Yehuda, that now we have to deal with the problem that we have a contradiction between Reb Meir and Reb Meir. So according to the general flow of the Gemara, the conclusion that we came to is that Reb Meir is always overly careful, overly nervous that someone might die, and so the animal might die. And that was the conclusion of where the Gemara got up to now. Reb Yehuda is much more relaxed. He's not afraid. No one's dying. Everyone's okay. We don't have to be worried. And so Reb Yehuda is the lenient, the more relaxed one. Reb Meir was more concerned. And now we have to deal with the brisa about breaking, the wineskin breaking. And we have Reb Yehuda, who seems to be very nervous that it's going to break. And that's a contradiction to what we said. And we have Reb Meir, who's not nervous that it's going to break. That's also a contradiction to what we've
Rabbi?
concluded. Yes.
Okay, I want to mention the Spanish have a wine bottle which is made out of leather. It's the skin of a behemoth, but the internal part of that bottle, they put tar in it to protect it from cracking. So I don't know back then. It's a Mediterranean. I guess this is a Mediterranean tradition with people who use these bottles. But there's an internally the bottles are insulated. They protect them so the skin doesn't break with tar. So
Right,
I don't know.
okay.
Maybe this is what Rabbi Yehuda I think is.
Right. Okay. That's an interesting fact. Thank you, Moshe. You always come up with some information that we don't have access to. So yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's a good point. It could be they learned this Gemara. They decided to add tar. You know, they realized you got to be concerned, or maybe maybe that was a common issue that they dealt with, that it breaks sometimes. Okay, sounds good. So have you seen such a
Yes,
a
when I
class?
was younger, I went on a trip to Spain with a group for 5 weeks. Somebody offered me the opportunity to go because they wanted me to participate. So I did go there, and they showed that these bottles that you buy, you can even see the tar sometimes. It's like you see it around the top of it, but they insulate it with tar. You know, it looks like a crescent shaped bottle. You know,
Right. But doesn't tar have like a terrible smell and taste to it?
It does have a smell to it. Yes, it does. It does. But apparently, it's such that it binds, I guess, with the skin or something, and they use it. That's what they do to protect it. That's what they do to protect it.
Yeah, but
You can smell it. You can smell the bottle. You can smell it when you get it.
Dried, right? Once it dried and everything, it's just like
It dries,
it's almost like a plastic type of thing.
Right.
I would imagine when it's wet, it smells. When when they do the roof guys come, the tar, and it smells.
Oh yeah,
you can
the
smell
smell is terrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of drinking from a cup that was made out of the roof material, but I don't know. It doesn't sound that great. But
I don't know if this is. I'm telling you, it's you could smell it. It's not like regular tar, but they put it's a kind of a protection, and it smells like tar.
Right.
And they told me
anyway,
it is a
all
form
right.
of tar. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, it sounds
like
interesting.
It's like what's it called? A rock. Doesn't that smell like tar, kind of?
No,
it only smells like
that.
tar.
These
Only
Ashkenazic people,
Ashkenazim.
they don't know. These
Ashkenazim, it
Ashkenazic
smells like
people.
tar.
I hate that smell. It's like licorice, black licorice.
All right. Anyway, so
Kind of like tar.
So the Gemara's here. So the Gemara says that Kasha to Reb Meir ad Reb. So there's a contradiction, Reb Meir on Reb Meir, that Reb Meir holds that we just concluded that Reb Meir is overly concerned, and here we see he's not concerned about the wineskin breaking. So the Gemara answers, Amalach Reb Meir misa shchicha. So Reb Meir says, no, yeah, death happens, but bekias hanoi lo shchicha. But the cracking of the wineskin is not common. After the muscle le'lashomer, you can give it to someone to watch, and this way it's going to be protected, and we're not so worried that something's going to happen to it. And this way you'll make sure to take the tithing right after Shabbos. But the death you can't be in control of. So if you could protect something, then maybe Reb Meir is not so worried. So that's why he says, I'm not afraid, but you can protect it. But death, you can't protect you. No one can protect themselves from it. And when time comes, that's when the angel takes people, and then there's nothing you can really do. So therefore, Reb Meir is concerned about death, but he's not concerned about the wineskin. Kasha Rabbi Yehuda, why is Rabbi Yehuda concerned about the wineskin and he's not concerned about death? And the answer is time of Rabbi Yehuda lav mishum dechayish lebekiyas hanoi. The reason of Rabbi Yehuda is not that he's afraid of the wineskin will crack. He's not afraid. He's not concerned. So he's not concerned about death, and he's not concerned about the cracking of the wineskin. So why doesn't he allow you to do this formula and drink the wine after doing this formula? Not because he's afraid that you won't end up tithing, but he's afraid. He doesn't hold of this whole tithing thing afterwards, that it can work retroactively. He doesn't have this concept of breira that he doesn't have the concept of breira that you could tithe later and it'll work retroactively, that you could choose it later and decide where the truma and the meiser is and which part is the truma and the meiser. And what ends up is that the other stuff was not, any part of it was not truma and meiser, and it ended up that you did not transgress any. That he doesn't hold of that. He says, no, you got to first tithe, and then you could eat. And Shabbos, you just be stuck. Now the Gemara says, okay, so that's the answer the Gemara has. So far we have an understanding that Reb Meir is normally concerned about death and things going awry, and the Reb Yehuda is not concerned. And we have Reb Meir happens to have an exclusion in a case of Bikiyas Hanoid. You could give it to a shomer, so you wouldn't have to be so concerned. And Reb Yehuda has a shita that he doesn't hold a breira, but otherwise everything seems to be to flow. Now comes the Gemara and says, really, V'lo chayesh Reb Yehuda lebikiyas hanoid? Is Reb Yehuda really not concerned that the wineskin will crack? V'hami dektani seifa, but didn't the conclusion of the brisa, doesn't it say Amru loy l'Reb Meir? These rabbis, Reb Yehuda, Reb Yossi, and Reb Shimon. We care about the Reb Yehuda part of it, but it really was three rabbis. It's Reb Yehuda, Reb Yossi, and Reb Shimon. And they said back to Reb Meir that how could you permit to do this whole formula? Aren't you concerned that the wineskin will crack? And if that's so, it'll come out that this person drank hevel, untithed produce, which is not allowed. The Amar, so what the Gemara is asking is, they were telling Reb Meir off by the fact that, why aren't you afraid that the wineskin will crack? Doesn't that sound like they are afraid that it'll crack, and they're surprised that he's not afraid? It sounds like they take that into consideration. And so that end of the brisa seems to prove what their opinion really is and why they hold the way they hold about the wine, that the wine is not that why do they hold you're not allowed to say this formula and drink the wine? It must be because they hold that we're afraid that you're going to end up not tithing because it's going to crack, the wineskin will crack and there won't be the wine left and you end up not tithing it. And so that's why they're telling Reb Meir off. Why aren't you afraid? We're afraid of it. Sounds like they're saying we're afraid of it. You're not. You should be afraid of it. You should be concerned. So it sounds very clearly. From this, it implies that Reb Yehuda is concerned that the wineskin will crack. So the Gemara answers, Hasam, there, Reb Yehuda, who dekamar Reb Meir. At the end, this is Reb Yehuda who's telling Reb Meir, L'didi les li breira. I hold that there is no concept of breira, that you could say that you'll decide what is the truma and meiser later, what are the tithings later, and be able to say that it works retroactively. I hold you can't do that. But according to you, don't you agree that you hold that you can do such a thing? I'm sorry, but according to you that there is brera, and you do hold that you can do such a thing, but still, you should still agree with me that you shouldn't be able to say this formula because of a different reason. In other words, I hold you can't do this formula because of brera. I don't hold the brera. But you who hold the brera, but you should still say the same halacha that I say because of a different reason, because of another problem. Aren't you concerned that maybe the flask will crack, the wineskin will crack? Amar le lichsheyibaka. So Meir answers back, when it cracks, I'll deal with it. But I'm not concerned that it's going to crack. So in other words, what the Gemara is answering here is that not always when someone gives a debate, someone argues with someone else, can you tell what their real opinion is? Sometimes they could debate the person on the other person's ground. That you who hold this, why don't you hold something else? Doesn't mean that I hold that, but I'm talking to you on your ground. I don't see how you could even say what you're saying, even if you hold the way you hold. I still think you're wrong because of a different reason. So that's what the Gemara is answering. That Rabbi Yehuda was not saying that I hold that you should be concerned about the flask, the wineskin cracking. I'm not afraid of that. I'm never nervous. But you who hold of that brera works, but still you should still be concerned about yibaka hanoid, especially. I mean, he doesn't say these words, but he's especially because you're always concerned someone's going to die or something bad, some other thing could happen. So you should be concerned that it'll crack. And the Gemara's answer is. Meir's answer is, yeah, when it happens, I'll deal with it. But we're not afraid. Well, I'm not afraid of it. I'm not concerned.
That's a tough answer, right, Rabbi? That's a pretty tough answer to answer back. In other words, so now what? The person's got to bring a tot, or what's this person going to do now that he drank the wine and how's he going to deal with it? What happens to the person who did it?
So the point is that what Reb Meir is saying is, I'm not making this extra decree. The Reb Meir is saying that this is halachically allowed. You want me to prohibit it because something might go wrong, and therefore I should this is the halacha. What are you going to do if afterward? What are you going to do if the mikvah they find out it was less than the sufficient amount, and there was some hole where the mikvah was losing water? What are you going to do? The thing is, this is the halacha. This is allowed. This is accepted. You're allowed to rely on it, and he says it's fine. I don't have to go and make extra decrees because something might go wrong. You know what I mean? Right. There might be some. It might crack afterwards. Okay, if it cracks, we'll have to deal with it. We'll have to look. First of all, even if it cracks, maybe some of it will be left. There'll be enough left. It cracks. It doesn't mean that all full. It could crack on the side. It might crack, where the half of it stays in. You'll catch on and you'll turn it over if it cracks on the bottom. It doesn't all fall out from the crack in one shot. Who says that that's the worst thing in the world if it cracks? You know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, there must be not necessarily did he feel it's sufficient to make a whole ruling that you can't do this because it might crack. That's like a rabbinic matter that you don't have to necessarily make these extra decrees. But Rabbi Yehuda doesn't say anything wrong about the cracking. He's concerned about the brera. He says this whole formula doesn't work. You can't make the formula of reciting this thing doesn't work. But your mayor, who's normally concerned about something could go wrong, here he doesn't show such concern. And his explanation before at least the way the Gemara understood it was, he could be extra careful with it. This is something you could be careful with. Could give it to someone to watch and so on. So he wasn't. Reb Meir is not overly concerned about it. He should be. I don't know if that's such a strong question. He should be concerned about it. I don't know if it's such a. I guess I also don't know how common it is for I guess that would also be a part of the equation. How common is it for it to crack? How common is it to crack in such a way that you lose everything? Things like that would have to also be taken into consideration. How careful are people normally with these things that they shouldn't crack? But he's not concerned. Okay, so now the Gemara says, is this true what we've been saying about the concern that someone might die? Reb Meir is concerned about it. Reb Yehuda is not concerned that someone might die. And here we have a Mishnah in Tractate Yuma, and the Mishnah in Tractate Yuma was quoted. Mordechai brought it maybe yesterday or the day before, and the Mishnah over there says, the Gemara says, is Reb Yehuda not concerned about Misa Vatanan? Didn't we learn in Tractate Yuma that Reb Yehuda Omer? All right. Thank you. Reb Yehuda says, let me mute it. Reb Yehuda says, Af Isha Acheres Maskinin Loy, that also another wife we prepare for the Kohen Gadol, and the reason being is that the mitzvah of Yom Kippur to do all the service needs to be done with the Kohen married. And so the Gemara says that the Mishnah, says that they used to prepare a Kohen Acher, an alternative, a substitute Kohen, that he would take office in case the Kohen Gadol becomes impure. And Rabbi Yehuda says, guess what? They would also prepare a wife for the Kohen Gadol, because what's going to happen if the wife dies? So he might become impure. The Mishnah, the first opinion in the Mishnah says we have to be maskinin like Kohen Acher. They would prepare another Kohen, Shema Yera by Psul. Maybe they'll find some disqualification, impurity, or some other issue, and he's not going to be able to do the service. There's got to be Yom Kippur, so we got to prepare. We got to plan properly. And so the Mishnah says you find a substitute Kohen Gadol. And the Rabbi Yehuda says you even have to prepare a substitute wife, Isha Acheres, because what's going to happen? The pasuk says he has to atone for himself and for his household. And the household, the Mishnah says, means his wife, and so he needs to. This has to be an atonement for him and his wife. If he's not married, then then he's not going to be able to. This won't be a proper atonement. It won't be able to fulfill the real mitzvah properly. And so the Rabbi Yehuda says you need to prepare a wife for him, because what happens if his wife passes away? So the rabbis answered Rabbi Yehuda back, and they said,
away, he has to remarry before the Yom Kippur service,
or maybe on Yom Kippur. I don't know.
I'm saying, all right.
Sounds like he needs to be married.
Rabbi, question.
Let me just finish the last sentence. If so, the rabbi said, Ein l'davar soif, what happens if the replacement wife dies? So you're going to make a second replacement? So they said, you don't have to go to such an extreme to be nervous that his wife is going to pass away. That's the Mishnah in Yuma. Yes, Ezra.
Why can't you translate Beito as being his children, especially his girl children? I mean, physically his house, meaning the rest of his family. Or are you saying that they would have used the term mishpachto if that's what was meant?
I'm not sure. I mean, Beisai, the Gemara does often say the Gemara mentions means a wife. Does it also mean his household? I've seen like in the translation on Yom Kippur, they generally translate it that it means his wife. Or some of the translations translated. In other words, when you read in the Yom Kippur about the Avodah, so Beisai, I think the translation, if I remember seeing the English translation, that translates it as wife because of this Mishnah, I guess, because the Mishnah says it means Beisai zu Ishta. Again, this is the Mishnah there in Yuma, where the Mishnah says it says Beisai zu Ishta. Now, does it also include the household? I'm not sure. I guess not. I guess it means.
So then I asked the other question. So why doesn't it say, if they meant wife, why not say wife? Ishto. Why use the term beito?
Why is the term Beisai?
You know, if you're going, look, if you're going to,
So that yeah,
it's supposed to mean something, then use the proper term.
right. So this is a word in the Torah. So we have to. Well, we'd have to look up. I'd have to look up the pasuk and the what the and the Gemara there. Okay, I'll try to take a look. We'll see if the Gemara, if anyone says anything about that. But anyway, that's what it seems like. It means that it's referring to the wife. I mean, it definitely refers to the wife. I'm just wondering, does it also mean the household, or it's specifically the wife? But it sounds the Mishnah says Beisai zu Ishta. Sounds like it only means the wife. Yes, Jeffrey.
That's the term that's found in Torah in other places too.
Yeah. Where will for example, where do we find
issue based over?
And I was asked the same question on all those terms.
Right.
You're going to say
That's the notion of the Torah.
mean his wife, then say wife. If you're going to, if you use beito by definition, it means
right. So why does Hashem say Beisai refers to the wife? But it sounds like because a woman is Akeres Habayis. Maybe that's the simple reason that the Torah says a woman is the Akeres Habayis. She's really the house, and the Torah emphasizes it more than once. Maybe that's why.
But with Noach, it says with the animals.
Right.
That's Ishu
Beisai bo. Right. Each one with their wife. Right.
But with Yaakov, it says Ishu Beisai.
Ishu Beisai.
Pretty sure the Yaakov, beginning of Shmos.
Yeah. So maybe that's why, because the Akeres Habayis, it's emphasizing it. Maybe. Okay, so in any event, so the Gemara says that we have Rabbi Yehuda in that Mishnah where he says, you have to prepare another wife because maybe Shema Thomas Ishtay, maybe his wife is going to pass away, and we won't be able to fulfill the pasuk properly of V'chiper ba'adoy v'ad beisoy, that he has to atone for himself and for his wife, and it won't be able to do that. So we see Rabbi Yehuda is concerned about death, that there's a possibility of death. You got to cover yourself. So why are we concluding, and we seem to have sources that Rabbi Yehuda says numerous times that you don't have to worry about death. And here in the Mishnah in Yuma, he is concerned about death. So the Gemara answers, Itmar Allah, we learned about this, that there was stated about this, Amar Rav Huna Bereid Rav Yeshua, Rav Huna Bereid Rav Yeshua said, Maila Asu B'Kapara, that they made an extra stringency with regard to the atonement of Yom Kippur, that we have to be concerned, even things that we're normally not concerned, we have to be extra concerned because we want to make sure that the atonement takes effect. And so because of this such a necessity, we go overboard. And that's the Gemara's answer, that Rabbi Yehuda normally is not concerned about death, but in the case of Yuma, we're talking about Yom Kippur, the atonement. We go. Rabbi Yehuda says you got to go overboard, cover yourself from all avenues. Got to make sure we get the full atonement of Yom Kippur, and we extra careful, overly protective, making sure the atonement of all Klal Yisrael of him and his his wife, and ultimately Klal Yisrael. So because of atonement, we take that extra step. All right, we're going to stop here. Have a wonderful Shabbos, everyone.
Thank you.
Sei
Shabbat
gesund.
shalom.
We're
Thank
hoping-
you,
Rabbi.
everyone.
Good Shabbos,
Bye-bye.
everybody.